Sunday, September 28, 2025, 10:28 a.m. Grand Blanc Township, Michigan. Paul Kirby heard it first, a deafening boom that made the chapel wall buckle. For a split second, silence hung in the air as hundreds of worshipers froze mid-prayer. Then chaos erupted. What happened next would become one of the deadliest attacks on a place of worship in recent American history. But hidden within those 8 minutes of terror were stories of extraordinary courage, split-second decisions, and ordinary people who became heroes. This is the complete story of what really happened that Sunday morning. It was supposed to be a day like any other. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc Township was packed with families. Children fidgeted in their Sunday clothes. Parents whispered reminders about sitting still. The congregation had gathered as they did every Sunday, seeking peace, community, and faith. Craig Hayden, 78, a beloved former bishop who had served his community for decades, was there with his family. Pat Howard, 77, a Vietnam War veteran, sat beside his wife Kitty. Thelma Armstrong attended with her daughter. John Bond, 77, a Navy veteran and grandfather, had taken his place among the congregation. All of them were ordinary people living extraordinary lives of service and love. Paul Kirby, 38, was there with his wife and 2 young sons. A lifelong member of the church, he had no reason to expect this Sunday would be different from any other. The service was in full swing. Prayers were being offered. The sanctuary felt like what it was meant to be, a haven of peace. But 6 miles away in Burton, Michigan, Thomas Jacob Sanford was already on his way. At 10:28 a.m., Sanford's pickup truck, bearing an Iraq War veteran license plate, accelerated toward the church entrance. What witnesses saw next seemed impossible. The truck didn't stop. It didn't slow down. It crashed directly through the front doors of the church, the sound of shattering glass and buckling metal piercing the morning air. Inside, Paul Kirby and others thought it was an accident. Someone must have lost control of their vehicle. Maybe they needed help. Several members, including Kirby, moved toward the entrance to see if they could assist. It was an act of compassion that nearly cost them their lives. As Kirby approached the wreckage, he saw the driver's door open. Thomas Jacob Sanford, 40 years old, emerged from the vehicle, and he was carrying an assault rifle. "I saw a gunman get out of the car," Kirby would later recall. "He began to open fire about 20 yards from where I stood." Time seemed to slow and accelerate simultaneously. Kirby felt shrapnel tear into his left leg. As he turned to run, he felt the impact of a bullet strike the doorframe just 1 foot to his left. "I was panicking and trying to get through the doors as fast as possible and just expecting a bullet in my back. I was just waiting for it." What happened next revealed the true character of the Grand Blanc congregation. Instead of pure panic, something remarkable occurred. Adults threw themselves over children, shielding them with their own bodies. People who could have run for the exits instead moved toward the danger, trying to protect others. Greg Mycat didn't hesitate. When he saw the gunman, he didn't think about his own safety. He charged toward Sanford, attempting to stop the attack. The gunman shot him 3 times. Mycat survived, but his wounds were life-threatening. His sister would later write, "Greg was attempting to stop the horrific attack at his church when the assailant shot him." Craig Hayden, the 78-year-old former bishop, was helping others escape when he was shot. His daughter Lisa would be kneeling beside her dying father when something extraordinary happened. The shooter approached her. Their eyes met. He had a clear shot, but he didn't pull the trigger. He simply moved on. Lisa survived. Her father did not. He had given his life protecting his flock. Dr. Jared Hicken, a 4th-year emergency medicine resident, and Dr. S. Bridger Frampton, another ER doctor, both members of the congregation, immediately began rendering aid to the wounded even as gunfire continued. Both doctors were shot while trying to save others. Their wives and children were there, witnessing everything. Grand Blanc Township. Police Chief William Renier would later describe the scene. They were shielding the children who were also present within the church, moving them to safety. Just hundreds of people just practicing their faith, just extreme courage. But Sanford wasn't finished. As people scrambled for safety, he began pouring gasoline throughout the building. At exactly 10:28 a.m., the first 911 call came in. What happened next was nothing short of miraculous timing. 30 seconds. That's how long it took for law enforcement to arrive. Just half a minute. A Grand Blanc Township police officer and a Michigan Department of Natural Resources conservation officer were nearby. They heard the call and rushed to the scene. By 10:33 a.m., just 8 minutes after the attack began, it was over. The two officers confronted Sanford in the parking lot behind the church. Gunfire was exchanged. Thomas Jacob Sanford was killed. But the nightmare was far from over. The gasoline Sanford had poured throughout the building ignited. Flames began consuming the church. Black smoke billowed into the Michigan sky, visible for miles. Emergency responders faced a horrific reality. There were still people inside. Some were injured, some were already dead, and the building was being devoured by fire. Paul Kirby managed to find his wife and sons. He loaded 9 people into his car and drove them to safety. Only when they were clear of the building did he allow himself to break down. "Once we got out, I gave my boys a hug," he said. The shrapnel wound in his leg and the bullet that had missed him by inches suddenly felt real. Genesee County Sheriff Chris Swanson arrived at the scene and saw something he would never forget. "The entire church is on fire," he reported. But he also saw the community response. "When I saw the community of the LDS church, they gathered under the pavilion, and they were all embracing each other. They knew that they had lost people, but they stuck together as a community." As firefighters battled the blaze, the true scope of the tragedy became clear. 4 members of the congregation were dead. 2 had been shot. 1 died at the scene, another at Henry Ford Genesis Hospital. 2 more bodies were found in the debris after the fire was extinguished. 8 others were hospitalized, 5 with gunshot wounds, 3 with smoke inhalation. The victims ranged in age from just 6 years old to 78. Craig Hayden, the former bishop who died protecting others, was 78. His daughter Julie Green would later write on social media, "I prayed for the man that took my father's life, and I told him he is forgiven." Her words captured something profound about the faith community that had been attacked. Pat Howard, 77, the Vietnam veteran, left behind his wife and 5 children. John Bond, 77, the Navy veteran, would never see his grandchildren again. Thelma Armstrong died alongside members of the church she loved. The FBI quickly took over the investigation, classifying it as an act of targeted violence. Special Agent Reuben Coleman revealed that within 24 hours, agents had interviewed more than 100 victims and witnesses. They deployed national response teams from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. Specialists came from as far as California and Hawaii. But one question haunted everyone. Why? Thomas Jacob Sanford was born on July 29, 1985, and raised in Atlas Township, Michigan. After graduating from Goodrich High School in 2004, he joined the Marines. He was a good Marine, recognized for his rifle marksmanship, rising to the rank of sergeant. He was deployed to Fallujah, Iraq in 2007, where he worked as a vehicle recovery operator and repaired military transport vehicles. He came home in 2008 and was discharged that same year. But Iraq had changed him. Sanford married in 2016. His father, an ordained minister, performed the ceremony. The couple had a son who was born with a rare genetic disorder requiring multiple surgeries. The medical bills were crushing. Friends noticed Sanford struggling with drug addiction. He had arrests for burglary and operating while intoxicated. But there was something else. Sanford had once dated a Mormon woman and had even considered converting. He spent time living in Utah. But when he returned to Michigan in 2010, friends said he was messed up and clearly affected by drug use. He began making disparaging comments about the Mormon Church, going off on tangents about it, especially when drinking. Just days before the attack, Sanford met Chris Johns, a candidate for Burton City Council, while Johns was campaigning. Sanford expressed anger toward Mormons. The conversation was disturbing enough that Johns remembered it vividly. On Monday, September 29th, Sanford's father spoke briefly to reporters. "I feel so bad about the families that were affected by this, aside from ours," he said, his voice breaking. "We're not the only ones going through this devastation." The attack came just one day after the death of Russell M. Nelson, the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who had passed away at age 100 on September 27th. The timing raised questions. Was it connected? Investigators noted the coincidence but found no definitive link. It was the first shooting at an LDS meeting house since 2018, but it was also part of a disturbing pattern. Just 12 hours earlier, another mass shooting had occurred at a waterfront bar in Southport, North Carolina, killing 3. That shooter was also a Marine veteran of the Iraq War. 2 separate attacks, 2 Iraq War veterans, within hours of each other. The coincidence was chilling. In August 2025, just weeks before, 2 children had been killed in a shooting at the Church of the Annunciation in Minneapolis. America was reeling from repeated attacks on its places of worship, the very spaces that were meant to represent safety, community, and peace. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer addressed the tragedy with emotion. "We've seen gun violence in our schools, stores, parades, festivals, and our houses of worship," she said. "These are places that we go to feel connected, to feel safe, to be together. But today, this place has been shattered by bullets and broken glass." President Donald Trump released a statement. "The Trump administration will keep the public posted, as we always do. In the meantime, pray for the victims and their families. This epidemic of violence in our country must end immediately." In the days that followed, the community of Grand Blanc demonstrated what resilience looks like. GoFundMe campaigns raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for the victims and their families. Vigils were held at churches throughout the area. People who had never met the victims showed up to offer support, bringing flowers, food, and prayers. Paul Kirby, the survivor who nearly died in those opening moments, had a message for America. "There's so many people that are so quick to judge, so ready to point the finger at who did it, why they did it. Some political reasons, just something. Everybody's making stuff up," he told reporters. "We can't be pointing the finger. We can't make this political. We can't let this divide us." It was a plea for unity in a nation increasingly torn apart. Dr. Michael Danick, medical chief of staff at Henry Ford Genesis Hospital, attended a candlelight vigil for the victims. Nurses who were on strike outside the hospital paused their protest to show solidarity. The hospital had treated the wounded, 2 ER doctors who were church members and had been shot while saving others. Sheriff Chris Swanson posed a question to his community. "What can we do to lean on each other, to be kind to somebody, to create a sense of unity over division?" Those are little micro steps of not only healing, but also turning the tide. As of today, one critical question remains unanswered. What was Thomas Sanford's motive? The FBI continues to investigate. They've searched his home, interviewed everyone who knew him, and examined his digital footprint. But a clear motive has proven elusive. Was it mental illness exacerbated by combat trauma? Was it drug addiction? Was it personal grievance against a religion he once considered joining? Was the timing related to President Nelson's death? Investigators are still piecing it together. What we do know is that on September 28, 2025, evil walked through the doors of a church. But it was met with courage. People who could have saved themselves chose to save others instead. A 78-year-old former bishop gave his life protecting his congregation. Doctors treated the wounded while being wounded themselves. A man charged an armed gunman to try to stop him. And 2 law enforcement officers, one with just 2 months on the job, responded in 30 seconds and ended the threat in 8 minutes, undoubtedly saving countless additional lives. The Grand Blanc Church stood for over 40 years as a place of worship and community. It was dedicated in 1981 by former Michigan Governor George Romney. For decades, families gathered there for weddings, baptisms, funerals, and weekly services. It was where people celebrated joy and found comfort in sorrow. Today, only rubble remains. The building was so damaged by fire that it had to be demolished. But the community stands stronger than ever. In her Facebook post, Julie Green, who lost her father, Craig Hayden, wrote about the moment the shooter looked into her eyes and didn't fire. She said she prayed for him and told him he was forgiven. It's a stunning statement of faith in the face of unspeakable loss. That might be the real story here. Not the violence. We've seen too much of that. The real story is what happens when evil meets grace, when terror meets courage, when hate meets forgiveness. The investigation continues. The community heals slowly, and the nation watches, wondering what can be done to prevent the next attack. Because tragically, we all know there will be another. But on September 28, 2025, in Grand Blanc, Michigan, in the space between the first shot and the last flame, humanity showed what it's capable of when pushed to its limits. 8 minutes can feel like a lifetime, and for 4 people and their families, it was. May they rest in peace. May the wounded heal, and may we all remember that in our darkest moments, we have a choice, to run toward safety or to run toward those who need us. On that Sunday morning, dozens of people made that choice. They ran toward the danger. They shielded children with their bodies. They treated wounds under fire. They forgave the unforgivable. That's the story of Grand Blanc, not just the tragedy, but the triumph of human spirit over human evil. And that's a story worth remembering.